Welcome to Faster Bike Pod.
Welcome to the Faster Bike Pod. In this episode, we're tackling what I think is the single most overlooked performance enhancer in cycling.
Absolutely.
It's all about maximizing your carbohydrate delivery when things get really intense. We're taking the science from the latest Faster Bike blog article and, well, showing you how a simple 3-ingredient mix can literally translate into race-winning speed.
It is such a game changer. I mean, for so many athletes, the biggest gains, they aren't in lighter wheels or, those tiny aero tweaks.
Right.
They're in maximizing the fuel that's actually available to the muscles. So our mission today is to just break down the science behind this specific formula, maltodextrin, fructose, and sodium citrate.
A mix that can boost performance by what, up to 8%?
As much as 8%. It's huge.
8% is massive. I mean, that's the difference between hanging on when the peloton surges and just getting dropped cold. Mm-hmm. This isn't about, some general health shake.
No, not at all.
This is precision fueling for performance.
Exactly. And, this whole strategy, it moves completely past the usual advice for those long, steady Zone 2 rides.
Yeah, the eat real food stuff.
Right, the real food, the low-carb ideas. This is strictly for those moments when you are pushing, say, 85% of your capacity or higher. That's where strategic carb delivery isn't just helpful, it's critical for survival.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we even get to the ingredients, we have to start with the metabolic basics. Why do we need this engineered drink when our bodies are carrying around these massive, almost limitless fat stores? Why not just rely on fat?
That's the core question, and it really comes down to two things: speed and efficiency. It's true, your body is always burning a blend of fat and carbs.
Mm-hmm.
Think of your fat tank as just enormous, like a 1,000-mile range, but the carburetor, the thing that delivers the fuel, it's really small.
So we can go long and slow on fat, but we can't accelerate on it.
Precisely. Fat oxidation is amazing for long, sustainable efforts. It peaks in what we call the fat max zone, which is typically around 65 to 75% of your max aerobic capacity.
Perfect for base training.
Perfect for base training, long endurance events. But the molecules are complex. They need more oxygen and, crucially, more time to be converted into ATP, which is the actual energy your cells use.
And when the attacks start in a race, time and oxygen are luxuries you just don't have.
Exactly. When your intensity pushes past 85% of your VO2 max, the body just flips a switch. It has to rely on carbohydrates because they can produce that ATP about twice as fast as fat can.
Twice as fast.
And the reality is stark. If you are above 90% of your max effort, fat is contributing less than 5% of your energy. So if you don't have stored glycogen or incoming carbs, you simply cannot maintain that power. It's the bottleneck.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting for me. Once we know we need carbs for high intensity, the next problem is just getting them from the bottle into the muscle.
Yes.
And traditional sports drinks, the ones that just use glucose or maltodextrin, they hit this massive physiological ceiling at around 60 grams of carbs per hour. So why that hard wall? Why 60 grams?
The barrier isn't your stomach. It's the traffic control in your small intestine. When you drink glucose, it gets absorbed through these very specific channels. They're called SGLT1 glucose transporters.
Okay.
The issue is those transporters, they get completely saturated. They can only handle about 1 gram per minute. So you do the math. 60 minutes, 1 gram per minute.
60 grams per hour. It's like a single-lane highway that just gets completely backed up.
Totally jammed up.
So the goal then, if you want that 8% boost, is to get from 60 grams up to 90 or even 120 grams per hour. How does this 3-ingredient mix unlock that?
The breakthrough is fructose. That's our second key ingredient. Because instead of trying to force more glucose down that jammed SGLT1 highway, fructose uses a completely different, totally independent transport system in the gut called GLUT5.
So you're literally opening up a second toll booth on the highway.
That is a perfect analogy. You now have the SGLT1 system for glucose and the GLUT5 system for fructose working at the same time. And that dual system, that's what effectively doubles your absorption capacity. It allows a trained athlete to take in 120 grams per hour, maybe even more. That's what gives you that 75% higher carb availability you need in a race.
So if it's a second toll booth, what's the bottleneck now? Is it still the gut, or is it something else that stops us from hitting, say, 150 grams per hour?
That's a great question. Once you get past the SGLT1 barrier, the new limiting factor is usually gastric emptying, how fast your stomach can actually release the fluid and, just how well your gut can tolerate that high concentration.
Right.
Even with 2 highways, you still have to process the sheer volume of carbs. And that's where gut training becomes so important.
And speaking of fructose, I know the second we say that word, a red flag goes up for some people. There's this myth that fructose is somehow, metabolically evil, that it makes you fat more than glucose.
Yeah.
Should an athlete taking in 90 grams an hour be worried about that?
Absolutely not. And that distinction is so key. That entire concern is based on being sedentary. If you drink a high fructose soda while you're sitting on the couch, yes, that fructose goes to the liver, gets converted to fat. But when you are in the middle of a high-intensity bike race, your muscles are screaming for fuel.
They'll take anything.
They'll take anything. Both glucose and fructose get pulled immediately for oxidation. They're burned for energy on the spot. So in a race, fructose is a massive asset, not a liability. The context is everything.
That's such an important point. Okay, let's get practical. The idea of just dumping 120 grams of carbs per hour into your system sounds great, but if you haven't prepared for it, you're going to suffer those infamous GI consequences.
Oh, yes.
What are the risks? How do we manage them?
The risk is significant intestinal distress. We're talking bloating, cramping, even diarrhea. And it's basically an osmotic issue.
Okay, can you break that down? Osmotic stress, what does that actually feel like?
Well, unabsorbed carbs are really concentrated. So your body tries to dilute them by pulling a ton of water into your intestine. It's like trying to get a sponge to absorb a really thick syrup. The body just adds water to thin it out. But all that extra water creates pressure and sloshing, and that's the bloating and discomfort you feel.
So progressive overload applies to your intestines, too. We have to gut train.
You absolutely do. The amazing insight here is that your digestive system adapts just like your muscles. We see gastric emptying improve within just 3 to 7 days of consistent training.
Really? That fast?
That fast. And the actual density of those SGLT1 and GLUT5 transporters, you can measure improvements in 1 to 2 weeks. You can and you must train your gut for this.
I remember one time early in my cycling, I tried this super concentrated gel I'd never used before on a hot day.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I spent the last 10 miles just convinced I was going to have to pull over and find a bush. It was a painful lesson about testing.
That's a universal experience, I promise. And that really brings us to the ratio. So if someone is just starting their gut training and they're nervous, what ratio should they use?
You want to start conservative. A 2.1 ratio of glucose to fructose is way easier on the gut, and it's plenty for intake up to about 60 grams per hour.
The old standard.
Exactly. It's the perfect entry point for conditioning.
Then as you adapt and you're aiming higher, say 90 grams per hour plus, you have to adjust that ratio to really max out the fructose pathway.
Which means you're moving closer to a 1.1 ratio, or that sort of high-performance standard, the 1:0.8 ratio.
That's the target. The goal is to get as much fructose in as you can handle to complement the glucose. Some elite athletes might even push it to 0.8 to 1.
But the key takeaway is that the magic ratio is useless if your gut can't handle the volume.
Totally useless. You have to test and adapt this stuff in training, never, ever on race day.
Okay, let's talk about ingredient number 3, sodium citrate. Most people get that sodium is important for hydration, but why is it so essential for this specific carb strategy? It seems like it's more than just replacing salt.
It's much more. Sodium is the molecular key that literally unlocks that SGLT1 glucose transporter. The S in SGLT1 actually stands for sodium.
No way, I did not know that.
Yep. It's a co-transporter. It needs sodium to be present to effectively pull glucose across into the bloodstream. Without enough sodium, the whole glucose absorption process just grinds to a halt.
That explains why just drinking water and sugar doesn't really work.
It doesn't. You need that sodium signal.
And we know sodium needs can be wildly different between people.
Yeah.
I mean, some people sweat 2 liters an hour. How can you tell if you're a salty sweater and you need more than the standard dose?
The body gives you really clear signs. If you finish a ride and you see those white, gritty salt crystals on your helmet straps, on your jersey, on your skin.
Yeah, the white crust.
That's a big clue. Also, sweat that really stings your eyes, or if it tastes super salty. And a big one is post-ride cravings for salty snacks like chips or pickles. That's a reliable sign of sodium depletion.
So what kind of range should those people be looking at?
It can be anywhere from, say, 300 to 600 milligrams an hour for an average person. But a heavy, salty sweater on a hot day might need 800, maybe even 1,000 milligrams per hour.
Wow.
So if you use the recipes on the blog, you'd start with the lower medium sodium version and just work your way up until you stop seeing those signs.
And before we get to the recipe, let's just bust one of the most stubborn myths in sports, since we're talking electrolyte.
Oh, yes.
Muscle cramping. Does loading up on sodium prevent cramps?
This is a great point to clarify. The research is very consistent on this. Exercise-associated muscle cramping is not caused by low sodium in your blood.
Okay.
It is overwhelmingly caused by neuromuscular fatigue. It's a failure of the nerve-to-muscle signal, usually because you pushed harder or longer than your body was trained for.
So smart pacing and strength training, not salt tablets.
Exactly. Sodium is critical for performance, but it's not a magic bullet for cramps.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Let's get to the fun part, the recipe itself. The goal was simplicity, right? No weird flavors or binders, just maltodextrin, fructose, and sodium citrate.
Let's start with maltodextrin. Why is that the go-to glucose source over, say, table sugar or pure glucose?
So maltodextrin is just long chains of glucose molecules. It's a polymer. It's still absorbed as glucose, but because the molecules are bigger and more complex, it massively reduces that osmotic stress we talked about earlier.
So it lowers the concentration in the drink.
Exactly. You have fewer individual particles dissolved in the water, which means less water gets drawn into your gut.
Which means less bloating and sloshing.
Right. It lets you drink 90 or 120 grams an hour without that overwhelming sweetness or that gut bomb feeling you'd get from just table sugar.
Okay, next, fructose. We know its job now. It's the second highway using the GLUT5 system. You can find it pretty easily in bulk online.
Just make sure it's pure crystalline fructose, right? Not like a corn syrup.
Right, so you can control your ratios precisely.
And finally, sodium citrate. Why that instead of just cheap, plain old table salt? Sodium chloride.
A couple of key reasons. Sodium citrate just absorbs better and causes fewer GI issues than sodium chloride. The citrate part also acts as a bit of a buffer against acidity in the muscles.
Okay.
And honestly, for drinkability, it's a huge deal. It dissolves easily, and it doesn't have that harsh metallic saltiness that makes a high sodium chloride drink almost impossible to get down.
The beauty of the resource on the blog is it has specific starter recipes. So for someone starting out, they could try recipe 1, 30 grams of carbs an hour, a safe 2.1 ratio, low sodium.
That's your low-risk entry point. But for real race day performance, you need to build up to something like recipe 3. That one's pushing 90 grams an hour. It uses that 0.8.1 ratio and has medium to high sodium.
That's the formula designed for speed.
Yeah.
But it requires that conditioning.
Absolutely.
We know that sometimes DIY isn't an option. Maybe you're traveling, you run out of ingredients. What are some commercial alternatives that really get this science right?
2 companies really stand out. First is Morton, with their drink mix 160 and 320. They use a pretty unique hydrogel technology.
How does the hydrogel fit into this?
It's another way to solve that same osmotic stress problem. The hydrogel forms in your stomach, and it basically cloaks the high-carb mixture. This lets it empty from your stomach into your intestine faster, where the dual transport absorption can then happen. It's a really elegant solution.
Cool. And the second one?
Precision hydration. They have a super personalized approach to electrolytes. They have products from pH 500 all the way up to pH 1500.
Perfect for that salty sweater.
Perfect. It lets you match your sodium intake exactly to your sweat loss, which, as we said, is essential to make the whole carb strategy work at its best.
So what does this all mean for you, the cyclist listening in? Yeah. It means that max performance requires training 2 things, your muscles and your gut. This simple 3-ingredient mix, maltodextrin, fructose, and sodium citrate, it just lets you maximize the fuel you can deliver to your muscles by shattering that old 60-gram ceiling.
And remember, you need to start experimenting with this in training now. Start with that conservative 2.1 ratio and slowly increase the concentration as your gut adapts. The full recipe, the ingredient list, the calculator to customize it, it's all waiting for you over at fasterbikeblog.com.
We spent this whole time talking about overcoming the physiological hurdle of fueling the engine. If you can get your nutrition dialed in and you're hitting 90 to 120 grams an hour, you've removed a massive limiter.
And that raises a really important question for what comes next. If your engine is fully fueled, where's the next biggest gain? You know, unless you're on a super steep climb, over 70% of your effort on the bike is just overcoming air resistance.
Aerodynamic.
Perhaps understanding aerodynamics, your clothing, your helmet, your position on the bike is your next big step to getting fundamentally faster.
That sounds like a topic we definitely need to explore soon. Thank you for joining us in this episode of the Faster Bike Pod. Until next time, keep training smart, and we'll see you faster out on the road.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit subscribe and share with your friends. Also, don't forget to head to our website, fasterbikeblog.com, for more exciting content that makes you faster.
Accelerate your ride. Until next time.